Hey, what's up everyone? This is Fame/Via here, coming at you with a new video, and it is yet again Sonic Tuesdays, which means this is just a general Sonic video. It could literally be anything. Lore, maybe a after comic dub, maybe a after reaction video. It could literally be anything. So we're going to continue what we've done before with the Neo with the Neo Metal Sonic video that we did 2 weeks ago, and Miz is going to read off some trivia.
Yup.
So yeah, let's get started.
Okay, first bullet point. Mephiles is the only character in the Sonic the Hedgehog series to have successfully offed Sonic. Despite being the main antagonist of Sonic 06, he and Sonic never interact with each other throughout any of his appearances besides this altercation.
That's correct. Mephiles is the only one that has. Eggman in certain games has tried, but it's weird, right? Because it's like some games Eggman really wants to end him, and in other games he just wants to get him out of his way.
Yep.
It's weird. Um, but I mean, heck, like a perfect example of like Eggman trying to off Sonic was in SA2.
Yeah.
But then again, the fact that he didn't want to do it by his own hands, kinda in a sense. Well, then again, it was by his own hands because he was the one that pressed the button for the.
The capsule to go out, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Eggman is a very tricky villain. It's like one moment he doesn't want to kill Sonic, another moment he is weird. In terms of. Go on.
Yeah, it is very weird.
In terms of Sonic never encountering Mephiles, that is true. Well, to be honest, technically the only interaction they have is actually when Mephiles did the deed, and later on when he's fused with Iblis to become the god of Soyana. Because in Sonic 06, just in case people don't know, Silver was basically Sonic's, I guess, a bit of a minor antagonist to Sonic until later on in Sonic's story, to where it's kind of revealed like, oh well, Mephiles is the cause of everything.
Yeah, and then Silver's like, well, I got fooled. I'm switching sides.
Mephiles has always been seen as Shadow's antagonist because when it comes to Mephiles' beef with Shadow, it is definitely more apparent that he has a bigger grudge against Shadow than Sonic, especially with his the first line that we hear him say in Shadow's story, I owe much to you, Shadow the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
Mephiles isn't happy with him. Mephiles is pissed that Shadow sealed him up all those years ago. But at the time, President Shadow doesn't know yet that, oh well, it was me that sealed him. Anyways, continue.
Okay, bullet point 2. In an interview by Game Informer in 2017, Takashi Iizuka stated that there were no plans for Mephiles to appear in any future games as he was only useful for the narrative of 06. However, Mario Kishimoto later posted in a tweet in 2023 that Mephiles could potentially return in future installments. He would later be revealed as a boss in Shadow Generations a year after this statement was made.
Yeah, in 2017, that was still when Sega was really not wanting to embrace some of the better aspects of 06. Mephiles being one of them.
Yeah.
And plus two, probably to Iizuka-san, well, Mephiles was erased, so how could they bring him back? Well, we all know how he came back, because the stupid time meter messing everything up. whatever pocket that Mephiles was in, the time meter, and this is how I took it from playing it, when the time meter did that, it somehow allowed Mephiles to force his way back into the new continuity that's created after Sonic and Elise blew out the flame of disaster.
Disaster, yeah.
So could we see him again? Who knows? You know? But ironically enough, Mephiles could actually appear in Sonic Forces.
Yeah,
Although I
he
get the
could have.
although I get the funniest feeling they're probably going to mention that in here. So we'll
There
save
is a
that
huge
fact.
possibility of that.
Yeah, so let's continue.
Okay, bullet point 3. According to the leaked script of '06, just after Shao uses Chaos Control to stop time around Mephiles in the silly Mephiles cutscene, Mephiles was originally a plan to say, "I am the sun. I transcend time itself, a bridge to other worlds."
Interesting. I am the sun. Okay, well that references Solaris,
Yep. And he transcends time itself,
which is what he kind of does at the end.
and he's a bridge
And
to other worlds, which kind of makes sense considering he went in the past, present, and future when you fought him as Solaris.
yeah, and in a sense, he also did that in Shadow Generations.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I am very curious on how they're going to handle Mephiles later on.
I am as well.
Especially with the end and also Dark Gaia.
Yeah. That's gonna be interesting.
Alright, let's continue.
Okay, bullet point 4. Mephiles offing Sonic reveals that his lie about Sonic being the Iblis trigger was actually partially true. Sonic himself would not awaken Iblis, but his death would cause Elise to cry and awaken Iblis instead. This makes Silver's mission deeply ironic, as offing Sonic would have only expedited Mephiles' plan, as Shadow alluded to shortly after his duel with Silver.
To quote Obi-Wan Kenobi, what Mephiles said about Sonic being the Iblis trigger was true from a certain point of view. By the way, total shameless plug, but definitely go stop by the Vin Victims Cantina to where we talk about Star Wars and other science fiction franchises there. Definitely make sure to subscribe and watch the few videos I have on there already. Anyways, but yeah, and I even mentioned that in like various live streams of when like people would like I brought that up so many times to people, is that Sonic was technically the Iblis trigger. He was the trigger to make Elise cry.
Yeah. So technically, Mephiles wasn't wrong with saying that.
As for Silver, if this was an old cartoon, he would immediately turn into a donkey. Because that's exactly what he is. With a cuss word etched into his fur.
Oh no.
Alright.
Oh god. Bullet point 5. It is unknown why Mephiles did not simply reunite with Iblis in the future, where Iblis was already roaming free. This discrepancy has caused fans to theorize that Mephiles was unable to join with Iblis in its monster form and required his Flames of Disaster form to do so. Though this has never been officially confirmed, another perceived hole in his plan is why he tricked Silver into hunting Sonic rather than doing it himself, as he does in last story. Though this is mainly explained by two facts. Mephiles was reborn slow and weak before growing strong enough to off Sonic, And he first needed Sonic to spend time with Elise and form a strong bond enough to the point that she would cry at his death.
And there's also one more point here that I'm forgetting. Mephiles wanted to, in a way, because in Shadow Story, he his original plan was to pull a Black Doom and try to make Shadow realize, oh, by the way, these humans, they're going to turn on you eventually. So why don't you join me?
Yeah, he did try doing that, and that's where we got the cool cutscene of Shadow doing what he did.
Well, here's the thing. He also tried it again in the future. Well, he tried it first
In
in the
the
future,
future, yeah.
and then he tried it again. And then we got that cool, you when and of course we got that cool cutscene where Beth was like, why was it all for those that were, pretty much, you know,
Mm-hmm.
consider him guilty to begin with, and then Shadow says that iconic line, even if the world chooses to become my enemy, I will fight like I always have.
Such a good lie.
So that is definitely true. But I think the other part was that I think Shadow was a plan B. That's what I think.
Oh, definitely, for sure.
All right.
Bullet point 6. Mephiles is one of 4 Sonic characters, along with Fang the Hunter, Knuckles the Dread, and Bean the Dynamite, who have a suffix style that does not refer to his species. Mephiles the Dark refers to his association with darkness, as his Japanese name can also be translated as Mephiles of the Darkness.
Oh my god. Are they saying that because Mephiles looks like a evil version of Shadow?
I guess. I don't know.
He's a demon. He doesn't. His species would be literally be called. If we are gonna go by the typical Sonic logic, his name would be Mephiles the Demon,
Yeah, quite literally.
not Mephiles the Hedgehog.
No.
Mephiles only became that form by his shadow going into Shadow, becoming a evil version
Of
of
Shadow.
him.
Yeah.
Mephiles is not a hedgehog. He's a demon. He's a demonic entity. Mephiles himself is based off Mephistopheles.
Yeah.
Both Mephiles, both Mephiles and Iblis's names are a reference to other names people give, without getting too much into religion. Satan, the devil,
This is also true.
which definitely fits Mephiles.
Oh, yeah.
Ironic that they combine to become a godly figure, which is how, anyways, like I said, I'm not going to get too much into religion.
No, but I see your point there saying that.
Yeah.
Bullet point 7. Ian Flynn has previously expressed the theory that Sonic Team intended the Time Eater from Sonic Generations to be a portion of Mephiles that survived the defeat of Solaris and the paradox that prevented his existence. However, this theory has never been officially addressed, and Mephiles appears as a separate entity from the Time Eater in Shadow Generations with no mention of a connection.
All I'm going to say about that, that's an interesting theory, but because of Shadow Generations, yeah, we can say that theory
It
is
kind of
debunked.
just it kind of debunks that theory. Oh, here's the Sonic Forces bit you was talking about at bullet point 8. In the earlier script for Sonic Forces, phantom copies of Mephiles are listed as part of the army at the Eggman Empire Fortress prior to the final battle. This evidently didn't make it into the final game.
That's correct. And I get the feeling he would have been in the place of Shadow at the time. To me, it has never made sense to me on why they had a Phantom copy of Shadow, because Shadow would never go full on evil. Um, so the fact that they didn't use Mephiles is kind of Actually, the fact that they were even considering him is surprising. Um,
Yeah.
who knows why that he was cut? It could have been that again. That was still when they didn't want to embrace the good parts of Sonic 06. Well, actually, embrace it completely, like they do now. Um, it could be because maybe it just didn't make sense because how would the Phantom Ruby know about Mephiles when Mephiles has been erased?
That, and
Um,
also how would Infinite know about him too?
yeah. W- Would it would it have been cool? Yeah, it would have been awesome. Like imagine when Sonic gets beaten. Like again, the one thing I do with my Sonic, because I really believe that Sonic still slightly remembers the events of '06, because there's so many.
That muscle memory's there.
Yeah, and it would have been cool as Sonic looks up and he sees Shadow there. Well, Mephiles. His hands immediately goes up to the spot that Mephiles.
Stabbed him through.
Yeah, yeah.
And tried to do the shadow.
Um, but yeah, it. There could have been multiple reasons why that was cut, and I think those are most likely the reasons. Is because at the time
Yeah.
they didn't embrace Mephiles yet, and it could have been just because it just didn't make sense. So how would the Phantom Ruby or Infinite know about Mephiles?
Exactly, and there's no way for anyone to figure out about Mephiles because he's kind of been erased from the timeline
Yep,
at this point.
yep.
Now, for the last bullet point, Shadow's Batman outfit depicts his clothes with similar gray colors to that of Mephiles' shadow form.
That's correct.
I never noticed that with Shadow's Batman outfit, but
And
yeah,
let me tell you, I want to dub those comics so badly. I need to get a big cast of people to do it with.
yeah, because we would have to
But
have people be the DC heroes too.
oh no, 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 no! I would be Batman.
Well, I know you would be Batman, but like the Flash and all them. We gotta have people for them.
Okay, when it comes to the Flash, I think we both know the one person I would gladly jump at the chance to voice the Flash.
GG.
Yeah,
We both know already who would do that one.
he would be the same way if Sonic ever crossed over with the Fantastic Four.
Yeah, he would want to be Johnny. But that is all the trivia bullet points that is on Mephiles.
Yep. So if you all are new here, make sure to comment, like, and subscribe. And definitely go sub to Mizu here. And like I said, stop on by the Vindictum's Cantina to
I
where
will put a link to it down below by adding the channel in the description.
Yep. And as always, I'll see you all in the next video. Later, guys.
Bye.